Hello, my name is David Malone. I have the privilege of working at the United Nations University headquarters, which is in Tokyo. The university itself is spread out over 15 countries on all major continents, but we come to you today from Tokyo. We have a special guest in our public conversation series. She is Dr. Kshama Metre. She is the National Director of something known as the Chinmaya Organization for Rural Development. It's a very large organization centered on the notion of self-help, of animating communities to help themselves. It's in a beautiful location in India, in the foothills of the Himalayas. Their headquarters is in a small town called Sidbari. It's very close to a famous town, Dharamsala, and also to McLeod-Ganj, where the Dalai Lama lives. So there's a high concentration of distinguished institutions and people in this very, very small corner of India, because India is such a huge country. CORD, as the organization is known, that's the acronym, reaches about 560 villages in the Kangra Valley. The Kangra Valley is famous for many things, as one of the most beautiful parts of India, but also for a school of miniature painting that began there in the 17th century, that flourished on and off over the centuries, and that has seen a revival recently, about which we will talk a little bit because there is a connection to CORD. Dr. Metre comes from a distinguished family in Delhi. She became a medical doctor and practiced as a pediatrician in Delhi, had a very successful practice, and in 1985, at the outset of CORD, she dropped everything, moved to the hills, and has been there ever since, renouncing all the comforts of city life she used to know. But I think my sense from you, Kshama, is that you get enormous pleasure out of the work that you do.
Yes, I enjoy my work thoroughly. It's been a very, very pleasant journey. People used to tell me that you've sacrificed a lot. You could have done something very big in the city, but I feel I have not sacrificed anything. I'm the greatest beneficiary of this beautiful program with the people in the valley. So I do enjoy it, David.
Well, I should also add that Dr. Metre has been widely recognized for her work. At first, she worked in total obscurity without any recognition. But within the last 10 years, a number of awards have rained down on her. She was decorated with the Padma Shri, which is in the category of Indian decorations, which is the most sought after in her own country. I had the honor of being present when she was decorated by the President of India 7 or 8 years ago. She was the Guardian Humanitarian of the Year only 2 years ago. So the work of her organization and her leadership thereof has been very widely recognized. But now why don't we discuss how you started, because you had to start somewhere, what worked, what didn't work, and how that led on to the organization you had today. So the beginnings, Kshama, what were they?
In the beginning, we started with maternal and child health in a remote villages of the Kangra Valley. These villages were given to us by the government of India in those areas where there were no health services. This is where my eyes opened to many things. We saw very closely the trials and tribulations of the village women, very poor village women, especially when we would be conducting deliveries of children, babies, sometimes under a kerosene lamp. I saw how difficult their life was, and this is when we began to think that an isolated health program will never change things. The multidimensional aspects of poverty need to be addressed more holistically. So the best way to do it was to talk to the women themselves. And that's when we've started forming women's clubs. And from them, for that women's club emerged a very good holistic program which has come bottom up. It has been designed with the women themselves. Some things that they would change themselves, self-participatory, and some things that we would help them to change by training and providing certain services. But the basis was very clear to us from the very beginning that it will be the women themselves who will influence the direction of the program. It would be very much active participation program, and we will do what they think is best for them. However, it was difficult because of the fact that in spite of the groups of women groups running very well, poor people in the country do not have any access to microcredit till very late when the microcredit system in India was developed. And it was only when the government of India made it possible for banks and the self-help groups in the villages to be linked properly and made policy changes so that the gap between the village people and the banks was solved very, very easily. The system is beautiful because it is very simple. The financial capital of the banks was linked very well with the social capital of the institutions called self-help groups. The other good thing that they did was that systems and procedures of the bank were kept easy, but they were linked and merged to the self-help groups so that the independence of the self-help groups remains. Now I would like to explore with you the concept of self-help groups. The concept of self-help groups, whether they are financial or non-financial or formal or informal, are universally the same. So the concept in our self-help groups of the poor remains the same as self-help groups for, let's say, Alcoholic Anonymous, self-help groups for chronic illness, disabilities. The real crux of any self-help group is the emphasis of the self-help groups that they would help themselves first rather than take external help. Now, this concept is ingrained in all the self-help groups. As a result, their strength comes from their own affinity, their own trust, their internal resources and strength. And what is more interesting is that they understand that they are the most knowledgeable about their own needs and conditions, and they stress on this because they are the ones who are experiencing it. And another factor that comes out with the self-help group concept is that, paradoxically, it is the best way to give help to help oneself. Giving help and receiving help bilaterally as a sharing concept keeps equality, it keeps dignity of people involved, and it does not lose their status as a person who's receiving help all the time. They don't become dependent to any system. They retain their own sustainability and their organization sustainability. So this concept, which we have tried to maintain in the self-help groups, has had many results. Now let me tell you about the self-help groups concept as such in the self-help group of the poor. It consists of 10 to 20 members, usually women, who meet weekly, bi-weekly or monthly. It's a regular meeting that they have. They save a small amount of money, which is comfortable for all of them in each meeting. Then this saved money is pulled together to lend out to their own members at an interest rate that they decide, no one else decides. Repayment schedule they decide, and the dispersal and the purpose, everything is left to the group. As a result of this, their managerial skills develop over a few months. We help them to build up their capacity, to build up their financial discipline, and help them to get into good financial decisions. Once they have learned to manage their own groups and have loaned out to each other, repaid, then only the banks come in. Banks come in after 6 months to 1 year, when the groups are considered matured enough to come into the system. And the bank loans the group about 2 to 4 times their own savings, which gets aggregated to the loan, to the saving of the group. As a result, the social pressure is very good. There's no physical collateral required, and only a very simple per se agreement between the bank and the group is enough. The bank does not give loans to any of the individuals. It gives it to the group, and it is left to the group how they disperse. As a result, the transaction cost for the bank comes down, and the flexibility of the group remains very strong. Over the years, with the self-help group concept, certain things have come out very clear to us. One of the things is that we have realized very much in the beginning, but it's become very firm now. It's not only the provision of the microfinance that is important for the women. It is the managerial skills that they develop that is really important. As a result of which they acquire skills. They have confidence, great confidence, and they are able to link outside to the rest of the world in any other field. As a result, there's a big spillover effect of the microfinance, more beyond what microfinance brings to them, like the economic contribution that women have started making, the ownership that they have developed of assets, and the income generation activities that they have developed. We have seen their mobility in the public domain increase markedly. As a result of what I told you in the beginning of my talk, that poverty has multidimensional aspects. And this multidimensional aspects gets addressed by themselves. Like we saw a lot of improvement in the health sector. Education of the children became much better. A lot of them started taking loans to send their children for higher education. And then many social aspects. The male dominance has decreased markedly because of the cash in hand that women have. And they have been addressing violence against women. They have bridged many gaps of the caste system. And a lot of gender equality has come in. Along with the groups, another very big phenomena occurred, which was the constitutional change in 1992-94 with our local self-governance in the village called the Panchayati Raj system. With this constitution amendment, we had reservation of seats for women. In the beginning it was 33%, now it's 50%. So women get elected into the local self-governance, as well as the disadvantaged castes like scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. As a result, what we thought in the beginning, in the first time the elections occurred, that women were very self-effacing. But today, this whole local self-governance, participation of women in local self-governance is actually changing things the way we were not able to change with only men participating. I think it's because women think of things that are closer to home. They have a nurturing type of a thinking. So they're able to think of the needs of the home, how to develop the nutrition at home, how to change, make sure that their children have good education. Whereas men are more outgoing and more concerned about what's happening to the rest of the world rather than what's happening at home. So it's a good combination of both, because when I look at the local self-governance now, men think of roads, communication, electricity, and things like that. Women think of more water with fuel, fodder arrangements. So it's a good complementary arrangement.
Great. Well, I think we should turn now to one aspect of what we're trying to do in Tokyo during your visit. I find that often social programs, no matter how effective on the ground, seem very abstract to people a long way away. Yes, they can hear it, they believe it in abstract ways, but often seeing the difference that a work like yours can make somehow brings it to life. So you agreed to bring with you to Japan a young man who is hearing impaired with his sign language interpreter, to whom your group was able to teach a skill, whereas he had been largely disempowered by his earlier education. Could you tell us a bit about that, Kshama?
Yes, I think it's a very good question that you asked me this. See, the poor are anyway disempowered with their rights, their opportunities, and their entitlements. But as soon as you can provide opportunities, especially to people who are poor and disabled, two vulnerabilities, I've seen that they can do amazing things. We just have to be creative enough to understand what would suit them. And luckily for us, some years ago when we met Shivank, we were in the beginning a little helpless about what could we do for him in life, because his school education was only till 6th standard. That too was not too good. But we observed that the people with hearing impairment, some of this young youth we went working with, were very observant. And they were interested in things around them because they couldn't hear. So we thought of painting. And then when we thought of painting as a livelihood for them, we realized that the Kangra painting was not getting promoted at all, although it belongs to that area. So why not train them? It took us 6 years of training, but you can see the results today. We had a trainer coming from the museum, the Kangra Painting Museum, to come and help us out. But I think it is to the credit of these youngsters, this youth, that they worked towards it, in spite of the fact the parents could not understand how could you earn a livelihood with being an artist. It was beyond them. Oh, we need our children to come back to the farm. They must do some farming. How will this give them a livelihood? But soon enough, when these children started earning, especially Shivank's mother knows now very well, that's a good livelihood. And the other parents are very much now stabilized and happy that their hearing impaired children are earning well. And the Kangra painting is something that is very much unique to Kangra. So when we go out into the market, we are not competing with other products. It's a unique product. First we had only a local market, then we developed a state market, then we developed a national market for them. And today, you know, with your help, people like you, we now have an international market for these paintings. And we are very happy because these youth are very happy themselves. They all have got married, the self-help group of these hearing impaired youth. 1 or 2 are going to get married soon. They have little babies who are normal. They got married to people who have hearing impairment, but the babies are all fine. So I can see a marked change from despair to complete independence, and from disempowerment to really empowerment. So no more the domination or the discrimination or the disparity that we saw earlier. I think we have a very good, happy ending with this kind of.
Well, with this painter who is with us at the moment, who's extremely talented, it much must be said, like some of his colleagues in the group, I've noticed in the 7 or 8 years that I've known him, that he was always a very calm and serene person. But today he's also a self-confident person. And I think when you come from a poor background and you become a major earner, as you were saying, for the family unit, the way you are viewed, instead of simply being loved, you are loved and valued if you can contribute to the income of a poor family. And so that again goes to the heart of self-help, that providing value, including economic value,
Yes.
to lives of disadvantaged people is probably the single most important thing that any outside intervener can do, because people do want to help themselves. They don't want to be helped primarily.
You're very right. You are, in fact, I think this is a tool for poverty elevation which needs much more attention than it has been given. It's been given quite a lot of attention, but the self-help group bank linkage movement has become a movement of the greatest outreach of microfinance program in India. But it hasn't reached so much. Some of the other people have adopted this model, but not as much as they should have adopted it to help in other countries, in Africa, in Latin America, some other countries of South Asia. And I would want each one of us who's concerned about inequality, poverty, and we have a lot of poverty now, still very high and very unacceptable even after so much work. We have 1.6 billion people very poor in the world. I think we need to work towards giving the people their dignity through self-help groups. It's not easy that it doesn't get built on its own. One needs to put in a lot of effort to make sure that we are empowering them, building their capacity on their strengths, rather than imposing it, because that would create a different kind of result.
And probably quite unstable and not durable, in effect. Kshama, thank you so much for being with us, with Shivank here, and also his sign language interpreter, Balbir, who has long been a colleague of yours in Cord. It's been lovely to see the paintings selling here. It's been lovely seeing how many Japanese of all walks of life have been intensely interested in your work, but also their accomplishments. And we're reminded that the Victorian notion of the hopeless poor who are always with us is in fact completely wrong. The poor struggle mightily against their poverty. And when they have tools or are given tools, they overcome their poverty and become, in fact, empowered, and rather than hopeless, extremely hopeful, ambitious for themselves, even more ambitious for their children. And that is something deeply exciting for the rest of us. Kshama, thank you so much for being with us. I'm sorry that those who are getting to know you online won't be able to be with us this evening in Tokyo, but I hope that you go to the Cord website, the Chinmaya Organization for Rural Development. There's a great deal of material, that you even visit Cord in the Kangra Valley, that you find ways of supporting the important work that is done there, because the more time you spend working with cord, walking alongside cord, the more you become convinced it's tremendously worthwhile. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope you will again soon on another public speaking opportunity here at UNU. Kshama, thank you so much.
Thank you, David.